Hello, everyone, and welcome to Steven Universe Revisit. Today's episode is Season 1, Episode 30, Island Adventure. Finally in our 30s. It's been a long time coming, Alex.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be 30 next year.
Ooh, got a few years to go. But speaking of people not in their 30s, uh, we start this episode on the gems trying to search for something on an island which is covered on these large geode looking growths. It's we've sort of seen glimpses in other parts of this, but would you say the world of Steven Universe is very much more like a kind of heightened fantasy where crystal and rock formations are more common to be more exaggerated in the universe,
Oh,
Alex?
absolutely.
All right, well, glad to hear it. Because basically the entire island is littered with these broken in half geodes across the entire structure of it. So they're trying to look for another gem monster, but it doesn't seem that anything's they're working under the assumption that maybe it swam away from the island. So when the gems decide to use the warp to go back home, Stephen asks if he can warp them back. He does, and everything seems to go well until Amethyst shows the horrific changes that have happened to her because of the accident from the warp, right? Her head has turned into a fly. And
It's a reference to a 1950s movie called The Fly that got a remake in the 80s.
mhm. And Steven screams and falls over, and Pearl tells Amethyst that's not funny when Amethyst changes her head back. And Garnet simply says, it was a little funny. uh, and honestly, good for them. And the crystal gems basically exit scene, right? As Steven wants to say that he's the warp master for warping everyone back home. When he runs to the big donut, and when he gets there, Lars is just sleeping at the counter, and Sadie is bored. And because of the intrusion and Sadie trying to genuinely do her job, Lars and her start bickering and like verbally fighting again. Uh, because of that, and Stephen wanting them to get along, Stephen goes, wait, since I'm the warp master, I could take them to a beautiful vacation paradise. And he convinces them to go to the island that everyone just was at. Things Sadie seems to really like the island, but Lars very points hates it basically from the first moment. He already lives at a beach. He doesn't care if he goes to an island, considering there's no connection to do anything on his phone. There's no everything that he would want is not here at this vacation, and therefore he hates it by default. After this, though, they can't find the warp pad that they came back in on. And Lars panics because that effectively means that they've been stranded on this island, which Stephen and Sadie are trying to be positive about it. But Lars basically is being his extremely negative self as usual. There's a there's a moment where they're talking about Lars, how he's just a tough nut to crack, and Lars says that he can do without the audio commentary. And I'm so sorry, Lars, but I'm afraid that won't be possible on this podcast. It's kind of our shtick, and I'm afraid we don't have video recorded. I know, Lars, this is going to be a lot for you, but don't worry, we're here. We're on your side. We're the voices in your head that you can listen to for guidance. So don't worry. And it's okay to listen to those voices sometimes, because sometimes they tell you good things. But I might be a little biased, because one of those voices is my girlfriend. But anyway, this leads into a montage with Steven sort of. He had his ukulele at the time, so he starts a song of saying how nice this all is as they try to survive on the island. Sadie seems to be good at hunting fish, while Lars seems to be good at cooking them. And we see actively that Lars seems to be loosening up a little and actually getting along with the two of them. You can actually see Lars getting happier as the montage goes on. He seems to be adjusting well.
Keyword on seems to be.
hmm There is a funny joke where while in their sleep, Lars like does that thing when like you're sleeping next to somebody, kind of like uh, throw your arm over them, sort of, I guess, holding them. Yeah, holding them. And then we show that Steven just does the same thing to Lars, basically breaking the mood, which is funny. Then we cut to the last day that they're on the island, where Lars is still very upset that he can get no connection. He can't contact anyone because they're just still stranded after such a long time, even after Steven reassuring that the gems should come back for him once they notice that he's missing. Uh, and Lars and Sadie go into a bit because of this, where Lars says that, like, do you ever feel lonely even when you're around other people? And Lars and Sadie start making out with one another on the island uh, from all the time that they've bonded. And this is rudely interrupted by Steven, who starts trying to sing a reprise of a song where both of them like lash out at him for going not having any sense of privacy whatsoever. And then he says that people go through his room all the time. But I'm going to call Steven out on this one because those are his family members. That's not the same thing, Steven. You should know.
It's really not the
It's
same
not
thing.
the same thing. You are a liar, Steven Universe. You should know better.
He should know better.
He should know better, but he doesn't. This is when, finally, they see something smashes through, and all they can see is a single floating gem, which makes Steven realize that the monster never left the island. It's just a naturally invisible gem monster outside of its like one single gem, leading them to need to get away as a storm immediately hits the island. Lars, predictably, like starts freaking out and panicking and wanting to go home so badly, so badly, when Sadie drags both him and Lars to a pile of leaves where she immediately throws them off and reveals where the warp pad is.
By the way, I'll go ahead and mention this, but this pile of leaves was also conspicuously placed there when they first got here, when they came back to that spot.
Yes, when Lars was wanting to go back home initially, he went back to the same spot, not knowing where the warp pad is. But back to present, Lars really just explodes on Sadie because Sadie, there's no other way to put this. She kidnapped Lars and Steven on this island against their wills by pretending that the warp pad was lost. And Sadie reacts to this by saying that Lars wouldn't listen to her and that she never lets her help him, which makes Lars react worse, of course. And while Sadie starts hitting him, Lars falls off of a mudslide. It looks like into a mud pit, and the invisible creature, just as the invisible creature gets there itself, and it's about to jump on Lars and attack him. I can't remember. I know Sadie went down. I can't remember if Steven also went down into the pit.
He did not.
He did not. Okay, it was just Sadie with the hunting fishing spear that she had crafted that goes down. And Sadie and the invisible gem monster kind of go into a battle in the mud where Sadie uses her fish spearing skills to drive the spear through the body of the gem monster until it goes all the way and it pops. So the day is saved, question mark, and Lars seems to appreciate
Sure.
Sadie a little more as they walk back, and Sadie says not to look too much into it for her saving his life in that moment. And Steven ends the episode in his blissfully naive self saying, "We should do this again sometime." And they warp away and the episode ends. Oh boy. Oh man. This
It
episode.
is certainly an episode.
So wow. We were discussing it during the episode that Sadie seems to be a bit too much perfect of a character in comparison to Lars, and we really see Sadie do something that is on the level of basically unforgivable. I don't know. If someone did this to us, I think it would be on the grounds to cut off communications from them, or like basically not desire to talk to them again. I don't know. How do you react to somebody intentionally stranding you on an island divorced from civilization? That's not,
I attack them.
yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. Like that's genuinely life-threatening in so many possibilities. It is controlling. It is that's a good word that we use to describe Sadie in this episode, is that she is deeply controlling of Lars in this episode. It's funny because like earlier we did see Lars take advantage of Sadie, and Sadie has like gone so far in the opposite direction that she has directly and overwhelmingly breached his consent in a way that is so over the deep end. And obviously they make up a little, but yeah, gosh, especially this coupled with the fact that she did reciprocate the fact that Lars like kissed her and stuff like that, you know? It's a lot. This episode is a lot, and it seems to understand to a certain degree that it's a lot.
Yes.
But it's certainly, I don't know when the episode happens, but it certainly shows that if anything happens between Lars and Sadie, it's kind of guaranteed to be just very messy. And I'm not sure there is a healthy romantic relationship that could come out of them, which is interesting because I know that they were like hoped to be a couple or something, but after this episode, I cannot recall how much that possibility is even entertained. Do you recall? No, no, that would be spoilers for the rest of the season. But what are your thoughts, Alex?
My thoughts on this episode. Okay, let me grab my notes. I already mentioned reference to the fly. Sadie and Lars are fighting. Now, Sadie and Lars, at the beginning of this episode, have a simple dispute between co-workers that Steven should not have involved himself in. It does not concern him. It's a spat of an employee nature. It's not something that Steven should have jumped at the opportunity to fix. When Lars is on the island, he literally looks happiest I've ever seen him. Sadie trapped Lars on a deserted island for days. Sadie wants to control Lars. Those are all my notes.
Well, I suppose I discussed all of them. Yeah, these characters are messy, and honestly, the more Steven feels like he's trying to fix it, I would go so far as to say that Steven is only making it worse every time he attempts to intervene, which is sort of funny.
Mm-hmm. He literally turns what is a delicate situation into an actual, like, nightmare scenario.
I if a coworker trapped me on an island, well, first of all, I would be dead because we're diabetic. But second of all, and I can't even begin to think of the amount of legal lawsuits and like jail time. Honestly, I don't know if Sadie. It hasn't been clarified yet how old Sadie is, but good God,
Young adult, that's all we're given.
I can't recall when that's told to us. But yeah, it's this is a lot. This is a lot. Their relationship is so messy, and Steven does not seem to realize how bad it is.
Yeah, shockingly enough.
Uh, Honestly, I don't have much more to say about the episode because it it does show how rocky and messy this relationship is, and it does. It's hard for me to imagine how it would go from here, but yeah, yeah, no, I'm almost curious, like how this would even be addressed in post. Like, if they stay as coworkers, wouldn't that always hang over your head? Wouldn't that always be sort of like just this uncomfortable aura at all times? I don't know. That's how Beach City is, I guess. I'm afraid I don't think I have much more to say, actually.
It's a pretty messed up episode.
Yeah, there was a lot of. This is interesting.
Actual laws being
Oh, well,
broken.
yes, certainly actual laws being broken. I was going to talk about the art style this episode felt, uh, I'm not sure how, a little rubbery in the sense that it almost made us think of The Simpsons. I'm not quite sure why. I think it was the big overbite lips that were happening in the episode.
I imagine so.
Indeed.
I think it was an oversight, but it could definitely look like a Simpsons thing.
hmm I I don't know if I fully say I liked the episode, but it was intriguing to watch in a watching a train wreck occur in front of your face and you can't exactly look away. And more like it felt like the episode was aware that it was. So it wasn't like the episode bad. It was depicting a train wreck of a relationship. So fascinating to watch. I suppose I don't have much more to say other than that.
Neither do I.
I'm surprised. I was expecting this episode to be longer.
Well, it's funny because I was also expecting it to be longer, but I think the fact that we were so open about the nature of Sadie's actions in this episode absolutely not being okay just made everything fall into place.
No, yeah, that's perfectly fair. Like Lars is not a good coworker. He is not a good coworker. He is clearly like kind of crappy in like a lot of ways. But he also does not deserve this at the same time. So in a lot of ways he's basically in the right this episode despite usually being portrayed as a negative Nancy of sorts who like doesn't get along with people and who just needs help despite it really just maybe that is commentary in of itself that's like you can't help others by blazingly breaching their consent in so many regards. That is ironic that I said that for a couple of reasons anyway of my character, but it says something about like how plot lines of shows like this will often let things like this just kind of go under the radar despite them very clearly breaching a lot of things with like a quote unquote like bad character or bad person character. And it feels complicated and messy and bad. And that is currently all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I don't have anything much more else to say about it either.
Well, I'm certainly surprised, but we already expressed that, so I guess we'll wrap things up. So, as usual, this is Trans Panda, currently fronting Marcille, and you can find us on Tumblr and Twitter at Transpanda Arts.
Hi, the Patreon will be linked. Patreon Patreon will be linked down below. Feel free to financially support us if you can do so.
Yes, and stay tuned in for the next episode of Steven Universe Revisit, which will be Keep Beach City Weird, or
Oh
Kibbutz,
boy.
as I like to, as I like to call it. Kibbutz. No, I got it. But that should be all for tonight. Thank you for existing, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
If I could begin to be half of what you think of me, I could do about anything. I could even learn how to love like you.